Okay, so it is time to discuss my August TBR, or to be read if you don't know what TBR stands for. I have once again put 12 books onto my TBR because, I don't know, I'm just a bit crazy like that, and I thought that 12 books was a standard for BookTube, but apparently it is still considered a lot. So apparently I'm just a crazy reader and like to put 12 books on my TBR. In saying that, if you watched yesterday, I did my books that did not make it onto my TBR, so I could have had a lot more. But let's get into the books that I plan on reading in the month of August. I am going to be showing them to you in sequential order or in reading order. So the order I show you is the order that I'm going to be reading them in. So we're starting off with our first tome, because there are 4 tomes. The first tome I plan on reading is this one. It is called The Book Thief, and it is by Markus Zusak. So this book is a YA historical fiction, and generally speaking, I'm not a reader that reads historical fiction. I was going to say I'm not a fan of historical fiction, but I can't really say that because I haven't really read them. But this book just sounds so amazing. Now, this book is 584 pages long, which is what makes it a tome. For those of you who don't know, tomes are books that go over 500 pages. So I don't know a lot about this book, but the little I do know had me very much intrigued, and I've been wanting to read this book for a little while now, so I'm glad that it's finally on my TBR. Basically, this book follows our narrator, who is Death. So, yeah, very intrigued by that. Death narrating this book from its own perspective and point of view. I think it's going to be really interesting, so we'll see how we go. I thought this would be a fantasy, but it's a historical fiction, so that's the first book I'm going to read in August. The second book I'm going to read in August is this book, which is Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. Now, if you're used to the American versions of covers, we don't really have them here in Australia. In fact, I'm trying to get the American version of Mistborn, and it's taken me a while. I finally ordered it. It's on the way. It's going to take a while to get here. But for now, we're going with whatever covers we have here in Australia. But yeah, Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. This is a YA steampunk fantasy. So there we go. This is the first time I'm trying something steampunk-ish. It's 462 pages long, which does make it a half tome, but it's only, 38 pages away from being a tome, which isn't a lot, but it's enough to still be considered a half tome. The basic premise of this book is that it follows a girl who ends up at an assassin school to train to become an assassin. This is something that, this sort of genre, assassins, is something that I haven't read before, so I'm very intrigued to see how this is going to go down. This book has been a very polarizing book for what I've seen of BookTube and the spoiler-free reviews I've seen on Goodreads. People either love this series or they really don't love this series, so I'm really looking forward to seeing where I stand once I've read this book myself. The third book I'm going to read will be the final book that I read in the first week of August, and that is this book, The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. I've heard a lot about Neil Gaiman, and so I'm really excited to get into this book because apparently he's not only a really good author, but a lot of people say he provokes a lot of emotion out of his readers, and I love emotional reads. I feel like they take the reading experience to a new level, so we'll see how we go. This is an adult dark fantasy, so it should be interesting. It is 235 pages long, which makes it a half tome. So, really looking forward to that first week of August in 2020, but I'm really looking forward to reading all of these books. Like, I'll be honest, not every single TBR that I've done have I been excited to get to every single book, but I'm excited to get to every single one in August. So, really, really excited. Alright. On to week 2. The first book I'm going to read in week 2 of August 2020 is this book, The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, I think is how you say that name. Again, I don't know too much about this book, but it is a YA fantasy and it is 526 pages long, which makes it my second tome for August. The little that I know about this book is that it is a fantasy book that takes place in Egypt, which makes me really, really, really excited. And I know that my stepmom likes Egypt as well, so when I finish this book, I might offer it to her and see if she wants to read it. But I have always been excited about the history of Egypt, especially the fantastical mythological side of Egypt. So this book, just with that premise alone, it sounds really exciting. I don't know more than that, but I don't like knowing too much about my books before I go into them. But that's the first book I'll read in the second week of August 2020. Sorry, the first book I'll read in the second week is what I meant to say. But the second book that I'm going to read in the second week of August 2020 has me really excited for a different reason, and that is it's checking off a goal that I set for myself in 2020. One of the goals that I set for myself was to read 2 books recommended by subscribers. I already did this quite a few months ago with the Bizarre Book of Bad Dreams. Thank you very much to that subscriber who recommended that one to me. And this is going to be my second one. It is a book called Sabriel or Sabriel. I'm going to know how to pronounce this once I start reading it, but it's something like that, by Garth Nix. This is a YA fantasy and it's 361 pages long, which makes it a half tome. I love my YA fantasy, clearly, and I'm really intrigued to see how this goes. So the subscriber that recommended this to me told me that he read this series growing up as a child and that it was a lot of fun. And one of the first questions that I asked was, does it contain magic? And he said, yes, it does, which makes me very excited. So we'll see how we go. I've never heard of this series before, so I'm very excited. And thank you so very much to you know who you are, for recommending this book to me. I really do appreciate it, and once I've read this book I can then tick off my list that I've read 2 books from subscribers, which is really cool. So if you want to recommend a book to me like that subscriber did, then please leave a recommendation to me in any of the comments on any of my videos. I will always read all of them, and yeah, if a recommendation comes along that for a book that intrigues me, I'll certainly give it a go. I prefer to read fantasy, contemporary, or dystopian, but I'm pretty much willing to give anything a go, provided it's not poems, because poems just aren't me. So yeah, just putting that out there. But thank you to the subscriber who recommended this. Can't wait to let you know what I think. The final book that I'm going to be reading in the second week of August 2020 is a book by Adam Silvera. Oh my gosh. I have heard of Adam Silvera for a long time now and did even more research on Adam Silvera once this particular book had arrived, and this guy is amazing. Talk about representing the LGBTIQ+ community. Adam Silvera is a guy who was born and raised in the Bronx in America as a gay guy, and gosh, if he's written a memoir or a biography, I definitely want to read it because I'll be very intrigued to do so. So before I show you the book itself, most of these books I purchased from the bookstore that I have an agreement with, who deliver it to me on the same day, which I really love and really appreciate them because they allow me to keep reading. In fact, most of these books in my bookshelf came from that store. However, I was talking to you guys yesterday about the books that didn't fit onto my TBR, about how my library is delivering me, well, they said 1 book a fortnight. Instead, they delivered a ton of books to me, and this is one of them. So this book I did not purchase, but if I love it, then I'll probably will end up purchasing my own copy. So it is called Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera. The premise of this book sounds really amazing. I'm going to read it to you in just a moment, but it is a YA fantasy, and it is 353 pages long, which makes it a half tome. I'm reading a ton of YA fantasy this month, but I love fantasy, and more than adult fantasy, I prefer YA fantasy, so that's why we have a lot of YA fantasy on this TBR. But I'm going to read you what we have on the back, which is not a lot at all, but it just has me very, very intrigued. 2 brothers thrown into an epic war, generations in the making, a fight for good and evil between those born with power and those who took it. One brother has the power to end it all. The other will stop at nothing in his pursuit of glory. Who will live forever and who will die trying? It just sounds amazing to me. I love magic, in fantasies, any sort of magic system, it can be hard or soft, but if it's a battle between good and evil, especially two brothers, oh, this sounds really good. So thank you, Adam Silvera, and thank you to my library for sending this to me so I could read it. So we're halfway through now, so let's move on to what I'm going to read in week 3 of August 2020, starting off with the first book of week 3. Ooh, excuse me. And, well, in the background, you can see a particular book. No, I'm not referring to Six of Crows, nor am I referring to Vampire Academy, nor am I referring to Mistborn. I'm referring to Scythe. I read Scythe a couple of months ago, and while the book Thief is narrated by Death, Scythe follows these sides, these angels of death, or whatever you want to call them, who end up recruiting two young people each year, or one young person. Anyway, this particular scythe ended up recruiting 2 people and training them to be a scythe, and I thought it was amazing. It's a sci-fi, which I didn't quite understand. I thought it was a fantasy, but I'm letting that go. I loved it so much that I really wanted to read the second book. It wasn't available last month, but it is available now. Yay! And I have my own copy, which I'm very happy about too. It's not from the library. So, that book is this book, Thunderhead, by Neil Shusterman. So again, it is a YA sci-fi, despite the fact that I think this is more fantasy than sci-fi. But comment below and let me know your thoughts on it. If you've read Scythe, do you think Scythe should be a sci-fi or a fantasy? Let me know. This book is 515 pages long, which makes it my 3rd tome for the month. Because this is a book that is a continuation of a series that I'm currently reading, I'm not going to say too much about the premise of what it's about. I don't even want to read the blurb personally, but yeah, as I told you, with Scythe, the original book in the series, it followed a scythe who recruited 2 people to try and train them to become a scythe. This is the continuation of that. Really excited to read it. Loving Neil Shusterman's writing style as well, and the world that he has built, so very intrigued. The second book I'm going to read in August of, the 3rd week of August 2020 is this book. Now, it is not the title on the cover here. This is a book ARC, so an advanced reader copy. This book was given to me by my bookstore because the bookstore that I purchase books from. So, because I order a lot of books from them, the majority of the books on this TBR, and most TBRs do come from my bookstore, they throw in a few books for free, and they just so happen to have an advanced reader copy of a book, an ARC, and they've sent it to me, and I found the premise so intriguing. Generally, I don't read ARCs, especially because ARCs don't get sent to me by publishers or by authors. Although if there's a publisher or an author out there who wants to send me an advanced reading copy to review, I'm more than happy to read that book for you guys. So I'm just putting that out there into the universe. But let's move on. So this book on the cover says Death Lies Between the Lines, but that's not what it's called. It is called The Stranger Diaries, and it's by Ellie Griffiths. So we just have a little description on the back, and it says, a dark story has been brought to life. Can the ending be rewritten in time? It sounds really intriguing. I did read the premise of the book, but I don't really remember much about it. I think it has to do with, like, I think it's set in a gothic tone. It is a tome with a gothic tone. But the genre is adult mystery, which I do like my mysteries. And it is 408 pages long, which makes it a half tome. I don't read a lot of mysteries, but I do like mysteries that don't follow the perspective of a detective. I much rather follow your standard MC or main character, if you prefer. Because, yeah, I like to theorize on who did whatever it was that they were supposed to do and see what happens in the end. But the fact that this has a gothic tone has me really intrigued, because recently, a couple of months ago, I read a book that had a gothic tone to it, and I really enjoyed it. So we'll see how we go. But, yeah, thank you to the bookstore for sending me this advanced reader copy. I really do appreciate it. The third book that I'm going to read in week 3 of August 2020 is another book that came from my library that I did end up putting onto my TBR, and that is a book called Pan's Labyrinth. Now, I've heard of this book before, but I've never read it, and honestly, it probably would never have been a book that I would have chosen to purchase. So I do want to thank my library for including this in the books that they've sent me, and I'm trying to get rid of the glare as much as I can. I'm so sorry. Can't take off the dust jacket. It's a library book, but it's a YA fantasy by, here we go, Guillermo del Toro and Cornelia Funke, I think is how we pronounce that, but if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below. So Pan's Labyrinth, The Labyrinth of the Faun, and basically, from the little description that I have read, it sounds like it revolves around magical creatures, including fairies. I could be wrong, but I think that's what I read, that it's about fairies. There are fairies on the cover, so it does stand to reason. But yeah, I read it when this book arrived, which was about a week ago. But I am looking forward to reading this. As I said, it's a YA fantasy. It's a hardcover, which I really appreciate. I'm going to start trying to buy some hardcovers, so we'll see how we go with that. But yeah, 256 pages long, which makes it a half tome. So let's get into what I'm going to be reading in the final week of August 2020, because I'm really excited to get to all of these books, but I always put the books I'm most excited about at the end so that I get through the other ones first. And the first book I'm going to read is another Adam Silvera. Now, while Infinity Sun was randomly just given to me from my local library, this book I actively looked for. I went out of my way to research how to get a copy of this book because it sounds so amazing. It is the first book I'm going to read in week 3 of August 2020, and it is Adam Silvera's History is All You Left Me. So this is a YAMM romance, which, in other words, MM stands for male, so it is a romance that takes place between two guys, making this my next LGBTIQ plus book, which I'm very excited about. Yay! I've been saying for a little while now that the LGBTIQ plus community has been underrepresented on this channel, and that is something I need to take care of, and plan to. I hope to at least read one LGBTIQ plus book every single month from now on, so we'll see how we go. I'm looking forward to reading this one. Apparently it's a very emotional read. From the little I know about it, the premise of this book is that it follows a character whose boyfriend has passed away, and he goes through a very tough time recalling all the memories, hence the title, History is All You Left Me, and I'm very excited to read this book and let you guys know what I think. The second book I'm going to read in the final week of August 2020 is this book, Beartown by Fredrik Backman. Okay, let's talk about Backman. So, I have been following booktuber Murphy Napier since the start of this year. In fact, she was the inspiration for this channel, and if you've been following my channel for a while, you know this. I've said it a few times now, and Murphy can't stop talking about Fredrik Backman and just how great of a writer he is. So all of Fredrik Backman's works have been translated because Fredrik, I believe he's a German writer. I'll have to confirm that, but I think he's German. All of his books have been translated into English, and apparently they're all just really amazing. So I'm going to start with Beartown and see how I go with it. So I'm excited. The final book I'm going to read in August 2020, I do need to give you guys a little bit of a setup for. So last night, talk about how, how close to the time I'm filming this we are. Last night I finished the 6th and currently final book in the Mistborn series. I'll talk to you guys about that tomorrow in my wrap-up. Now, the 6th book is not the final book in the Mistborn series. I only found this out a couple of days ago, but for the published books that are out at the moment, I have now read every single Mistborn, and so I need to move on to another Brandon Sanderson. I know that eventually I want to get on to reading Warbreaker, and then I want to read the Stormlight Archive series. That is going to happen, but because I've just come off reading a massive Brandon Sanderson YA series, and because I want to keep reading Brandon Sanderson, I want to take a little break from reading his adult works and start reading a young adult fantasy book that he has released. No, it's a sci-fi. I do apologize. So I have read Steelheart. This is my Sanderson shelf, which shows how much I love Brandon Sanderson. It's all Sanderson books. I have read Steelheart, and I absolutely love that. But this is completely different to Steelheart, and it is called Skyward. So I'm very excited to read this book. This is a different cover to the US cover, which I do love because it is purple. But one thing that I will point out about how beautiful this cover is I love the border on the cover with all the little diamonds and the edging and the gold, and I do love that. Like, I just wish I could get the purple US cover with this border. I think it would just be perfect. But you know what? We appreciate the good things that we have in book covers in Australia. I mean, we have to. So one thing that I've heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it makes sense to me, is that apparently, I don't know if this is true, but apparently in America, Americans buy books based on how the cover looks, and in Australia we buy books based on what the blurb says. So in America they need to be a lot more careful with how the cover looks to ensure that it motivates someone to pick up the book, where in Australia we need to make sure that the blurb is intriguing enough for people to pick up the book. Either way, let's get back to Skyward, because I'm really excited to keep going with my continuation of Brandon Sanderson. I feel like I'm going to probably read all of Sanderson's works. I trust him as an author. He is my favourite author of 2020. I did not know about him going into 2020, but I have a goal to read as many of, if not all of his books, so we'll see how we go. But yeah, this is the book I'm going to read of Sanderson's in August, and I always leave Sanderson's books till last, so that's why it's the last book on my TBR. So it is a YA sci-fi. Again, I thought it was a fantasy, but that's okay, I can let that go. And it is 510 pages long, which makes it a tome. Not really surprising. Most of Brandon Sanderson's books are at least a tome or more. The Stormlight Archive books are apparently 1,000 pages for each one, but the way they're sold here in Australia is we have part 1 and part 2. So we have a 500-page book and a 600-page book separately bounded, I guess to make the reading experience easier. But anyway, I'm just making a point that a lot of Brandon Sanderson's books are tomes, and Brandon Sanderson writes really quickly, so by the time we get to the end of the year, I'm sure he would have published even more books. So we'll see how we go with me trying to catch up as quickly as I can with all of his works, and I do love his stuff. So we'll see how we go. I will read the description on the back because I know nothing about this book, and because I'm not going to get to it until the last book of the month. So, the world has been under attack for hundreds of years. An alien race called the Krell leads onslaught after onslaught from the sky in a never-ending campaign to destroy humankind. Humanity's only defense is to take to their ships and fight the enemy in the sky. This is definitely a sci-fi. If I didn't know it before, I do now. Pilots have become the heroes of what's left of the human race, and Spencer, which is spelt differently to what I thought it would be spelled, it's not spelt the P-L-L way of S-P-E-N-C-E-R, but rather S-P-E-N-S-A. So there you go. Spencer has always dreamed of becoming one of them, but the chances of that happening were slim to none, at least until the Krells doubled their attacks. It's possible that humanity's desperation to survive will finally take her skyward. So, yes, very much intrigued in reading this book. So, these are the books that I'm going to be reading for the first half of August 2020. And these are the books I'm going to be reading for the second half of August 2020. If you have read any of those 12 books and you want to discuss them with me or, talk to me about them in a spoiler-free way, please let me know in the comments section below. If there's any you're intrigued to see what my thoughts are, or if there are any you'd like to buddy read with me, do feel free to let me know. But also, if you want to talk to me about books in a spoilery way, I always leave my email in the description below, so please do not spoil anything here in the comments section. Because, I don't want to have it spoiled for me or for any of the viewers that watch my videos, but you can email me with spoilers, but please don't spoil me till I've read these books. I really do appreciate it. But in the meantime, that is what I'm reading for the month of August 2020 in the order that I'm going to read them. So if you would like to buddy read along with me, absolutely feel free to do so. These are the books I'm going to read in week 1. So, keep up to date with my reading vlog, where I currently do daily vlogs, where I do a midweek vlog covering Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, and an end of week vlog that covers Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So I hope you can join me over there as I go through all these books and discuss my thoughts and feelings on all of them. But in the meantime, I'm letting you guys go. Peace, blessings and so much love. Thank you so much for watching. I post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday, and I'll see you again soon. Mwah! Bye guys, happy reading, bye!